much to talk about, as always, to our regular next two guests.
Yes, they are, of course, Professor of Public Health Linda Bauld and virologist Dr. Chris Smith. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Linda, should we start with vaccines and this announcement about under 40s being given an alternative to the AstraZeneca? If you're under 40 and you're being told you've got to have something else, should you be worried? What should you think this morning?
Well, John, I think this was a decision taken by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation with the Medicines Healthcare Regulatory Agency to essentially say that at the current time when the prevalence of the disease is so low in the UK, and there has been some incidents of these very rare blood clots, we know from the data released there's been just about over 240 that the MHRA has identified, that the balance of risk is that because we've got other vaccines for which we haven't seen these adverse events, the Pfizer and Moderna, to be cautious, we'll offer those to younger people as they come forward. And younger people will continue to be able to get a safe and effective vaccine.
Chris, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all based on what the figures show us. And after the second dose, if you didn't have it after the first dose, are extremely rare indeed. So you can be very reassured if you've had the first dose, you're even safer than a member of the general population having their first dose. So you should go ahead and have your second dose, especially if you're pregnant.
Linda, talking about second doses, actually, where are we at when it comes to, you know, there was a lot of research being done, some trials in second dose of alternative manufacturers of the vaccine. So, for example, taking the Pfizer one first and then the Oxford AstraZeneca second. Where are we?
They started a couple of months ago. I think they were recruiting about 800 individuals. I need to check that. And essentially, they're doing two things now. They're switching the vaccine, so maybe AstraZeneca first and then Pfizer second or vice versa. And they're also testing different dosing durations, so a shorter period between the two vaccines or longer. We should expect to see the results of that trial fairly soon. I don't think we'd be changing the advice on having the same vaccine for both doses extended to what's called ComBoost, which of course is looking at the booster vaccines that some groups may receive in the autumn that may be modified to respond slightly better to some of the variants we have. So
12 countries on the green list that you don't have to isolate when you come back from, for English travellers at least. Chris, I know you were worried about the government being too speedy on this and opening up too readily. What do you make of this list of 12?
Well, the approach they're taking in having this traffic light system seems a sensible one, where you're taking into account what the activity of the virus is in the end destination. And the point was that a lot of good work has gone into putting us in the strong position we're in this country, and we don't want to potentially endanger, imperil or undermine that good work by importing back to our country cases of coronavirus that could bypass the protection we've given our population by being a variant of some. Not just for the summer, we've got to look ahead. We've got to look ahead to the autumn as well, because when autumn comes, this puts all the same pressures of winter back on again, and we do generally see an uptick in seasonal infections then, including we're anticipating coronavirus infections. So we need to be in good shape for them.
But Chris, looking at our inbox this morning, lots of people getting in touch saying, hang on a minute, we've had the vaccinations, lots of people have had it, certainly the most vulnerable people have had it. What was the point in protecting ourselves if we can't go on holiday to places where, OK, then they might not be as safe as Portugal, but maybe not that much riskier? I
think the thing to bear in mind with all of this is that this is a short-term measure and things are going to improve. But if you think about it in the short term, while we have vaccinated our population, there are places on Earth where there are lots of cases of viruses spreading among people at the moment. I'm thinking of India, of course. And the connection to India is we're seeing in our country right now imported cases of a variant from India, the Indian subtype 2 variant, which is spreading. Now, what we don't want to do is send people who have been vaccinated overseas, because if you think about it, the only case of a virus coming back with one of those people is going to be one that can bypass the protection conferred by their vaccine. It has countries like India, like many of the South American countries with high levels of disease activity at the moment there's high risk in those places, variants will emerge that could undermine the protection of the vaccine. And that's what we want to avoid bringing back to our country in the short term. Long term, I think these are all measures that work for now. They're not going to be here forever.
It is, absolutely. I mean, the B1671 to the Indian variant, there's over 500 cases of that in the UK. Only just over a third of them are directly linked to travellers or their contacts. So there has been some community spread. And we now know that's a variant of concern. And we could have more of these in the future. A new study from Qatar this week showed that against the South African variant, the Pfizer vaccine was not as effective. So it is about being cautious. I think Chris and I, if we were to point to one thing, it would be concern that is most of concern at the moment. It is variants, and that's why international travel, we still need to be approaching it with caution, doing it gradually, but looking ahead to the longer term, where of course hopefully we'll be able to return to more of those connections between countries.
Back out to colleagues, and in terms of advice, Chris.
Well, I think most people will acknowledge that there is this entity called Zoom fatigue. And certainly at the end of the day, most people are sick and tired of staring at a screen, and they really ache to embrace their colleagues on a social basis, face-to-face again. There are some things which are very convenient, very easy to do, and it's handy to do them from a computer screen. There are other things which are much harder to do except in person. And so I think what we need is a balance. And I think what coronavirus has shown us is that we can do things from home, we can do things outside of the office, but we're also missing out a lot by not being able to be in that more communal situation.
Bumping or won't be handshaking again, but it is so psychologically just so important to have human reaction.
It is. I think behaviourally, I think this year has had a big impact on so many of us in so many ways, as we've discussed before. One of the things we've noticed, even in academia and universities, is that existing collaborations have continued in quite a strong way, but we maybe haven't formed new collaborations in the way that we might, because we can't meet so much face to face. So, of course, there's been surveys out this week that show that employers are also thinking of a blended approach to return to the office and giving people, where they can, much more of an option to work from home. So, let's take some positives away from this year. We've been forced to work virtually in some sectors. There are benefits to that under certain circumstances. So as Chris says, I really endorse this idea of having a mix and trying to find the right solution for each sector.
I wonder when you two will finally get face to face.
No, we're doing it. We're going to try to do it when it's allowed. Absolutely.
You're going to have to fix the weather, though.
Yeah, that's not my problem. That's not my problem. I know I'll be inside. You two can be outside.
That was my worry.
No, we'll be kind. We'll be kind. We'll make it work. Chris, Linda, it's always good to talk to you. We'll see you next Saturday.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Chris saying people are fed up of looking at screens all the time. Try sitting here. I mean, we've hardly had a real human being in the studio between us for
Still
a
don't.
year. Yeah.
I still don't.